Can I help? What's on your mind?
So I am doing a project for school. I'm in my third year of PT school, and this project is actually pretty cool. We get to reach out to PTs to kind of talk about their journey through PT school, their journey of how they got to where they are now, and different types of certifications that they got along the way. I'm definitely interested in working with like athletes and sports, and so I'm kind of going back and forth between like what type of continuing education I want to do when I graduate. And so I'm love following you on Instagram, and all your gymnastics stuff is super cool. Uh, and then I listened to a podcast that you were in. And so I would just love to hear from you about firsthand your kind of PT journey and how you got here.
Yeah, well, I will definitely say that my PT journey is unique for sure. So there's bits and pieces of it that you probably do want to follow and some that you don't. I guess, yeah, from the beginning, I wanted to go into the medical field when I was younger in high school, just because I want, similar to you, I wanted to work with, athletes or sports or just something with medicine. And I originally thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. So I thought about going that route. And then I was like, ooh, 10 years, a lot of money, a lot of time. So I was like, well, I'm going to go with that. So I applied to Springfield's physical therapy program and got rejected the first time in high school. So I went for exercise science, which I didn't know where it was going to go. And then I applied again to transfer my freshman year and got rejected again. And then I finally transferred in my sophomore year when a bunch of people left the program. And so Springfield's program was a 6.5 year bridged program. So 3.5 years undergrad, 3 years undergrad, and then 3.5 years grad. So my junior year I was done and then did my grad stuff. My senior year I was doing gymnastics. So that was like a little bit of a chaotic time, but I think it was good and bad. It was good that I saw how things were linking to athletes, which is probably why I stuck with the athletic route. But it was also just like a lot of work. So did that. And then, yeah, I guess I wanted to get into it because of the sports, the helping people, spending time with people. I knew I wanted to work in gymnastics or do something with gymnastics. And then it just worked out where my fifth year was all academically. So I was there anyways. And then my sixth year was clinicals. So had a good first clinical at a gymnastics place. Like the Y that I work at now has a place inside of it. And so I kind of got connected with people around that department, like I was like, oh, this is a good gym. And like, I could see myself here. So I was kind of brewing on going back to this area where I live now because I liked the gymnastics place that I was at, and they had a lot of good jobs around here. And I think I was getting the vibe that maybe that person would offer me a job should I come back later and go for it. So that was kind of like how I got, I guess, that idea. And then did an acute care rotation and the world kind of exploded. I'm not sure if you know this story at all, but I actually failed my acute care rotation, got kicked out of school in my last semester, and was pretty much on my own, like kind of hung out. So yeah.
That was the podcast I listened to. I think it was Untold Physio Stories.
Yeah, Urson's great. Yeah. So that threw a wrench in the gears, but that was quite a long debacle of a roller coaster. And then, yeah, went through the whole thing. It was real rough. Had a lot of mental health issues during there, but then sat in front of the board, reapplied, did get back in, but I was not graduating with my class. So I did my repeat. I did my third clinical, which was home care. And then they offered me a job, actually, the home care rotation. So that was a little bit of a weird situation. But then went back to school. Everybody had 6 weeks to do their dissertations. I did mine as well. They graduated. I started my clinical, like you probably saw the podcast the same day. And so I kind of like went my own, just a little tunnel vision for the summer, and then graduated in August finally. And then moved up here. And then the second the first clinical that I was at offered me a job in a new facility they were opening. So that's when I worked at that facility for 2 years. And yeah, it was a great place to start, but it was very high paced. It was very insurance based. It was very 2 to 3 people an hour. I was staying up 2 hours extra to do my notes. And I was just like, ooh, I don't like this. This is like hard to kind of deal with. And I was very under equipped to deal with some of the things that I was dealing with. So that's when I kind of went in geek mode into the Con Ed courses and research. And for like 2 years, I did that. And then I started doing my SCS after that first year. And then I guess maybe any questions you have there, and then we can talk about how I got the champion if you want to.
Yeah. So how did you I know there's so many different types of courses, and there's so many opportunities out there for students and postgraduate, like new PTs for
Yeah.
continuing education. Like, how did you kind of like funnel your way down to figure out which ones would be
Yeah.
most helpful for you?
The ones that I sucked at those were the courses that I took. So I was very fumbly and overwhelmed with evaluations. And, I got overwhelmed with like what I was doing like 47 laboral tests just to do them all because I was nervous I was going to miss something. So I just felt really overwhelmed with not having like a systematic approach to like watching someone just like feeling fresh from the beginning and being like, okay, what can I do from the very beginning and then work my way down. So that's why I took SFMA first, because I was like, I'm really not good at evaluations on a global point of view with movements. I'm maybe better at like the specifics, but not the global stuff. So I needed like a starting point for that. And at that point, SFMA was just kind of getting really popular and it was like really a perfect fit for me. So I took that one. And then I was seeing a lot of general spine, just like chronic pain / general, non-specific low back pain. And I just I couldn't help people. I was really not great with it. I like got some great information from my school to start with. Our spine course was good, but I really didn't feel like I was getting good outcomes. People were upset. They were leaving. I felt like not good every day at the clinic. And so after just being really frustrated for a while, I took the Mackenzie A course. Urson helped me a lot during that phase because he was running an online mentorship program. So studied a lot of chronic pain in that year, a lot of low back pain, Mackenzie. But I read a lot of Paul Hodges research, a lot of Stuart McGill's research. Took the Mackenzie A course, read all 4 of the Mackenzie books, talked to Urson. And then with the SFMA, I kind of started getting my head around like, okay, I'll use Mackenzie stuff locally at the spine and some biomechanics and loading strength conditioning stuff, but then I'll kind of use SFMA around it. So it was really about like what was really hard for me. My caseload was majority low back pain. I was starting to dabble in the gymnastics world too. More clients were coming to me for gymnastic stuff. So I was like, well, I have a lot of general low back pain and a lot of gymnasts who are athletic low back pain. So if I just, black out for 6 months and read all this research and study these books, I'll get a better handle on it. And it did help a lot. I mean, it took a lot of trial and error and reps to kind of get that way, but that's how I kind of started out, was the SFMA, Mackenzie A, reading a lot of research and bumming library access from the students that I was, that were in the clinic. And then, after that, I was like, okay, I kind of got my feet on the ground in terms of a general assessment. And then I don't know whether it was I just started seeing more or they started referring more to me, but I just got a ton of post-op shoulders, like slap repairs and tenodesis from like just general people who want to play golf, want to like, do whatever. And I started working out at a local CrossFit gym. So some of those were coming more and I was like, okay, I really suck at shoulders. And I remember specifically, I was following the protocol as I thought it was intended. And I really flared an older woman's cuff up like really bad. Like I thought that she retore her cuff and her surgery failed. And I thought she was going to go back to the doctor and need another surgery. And I felt really, really, really bad. I sat at my desk and I was like, I'm never going to feel like this again. So that's when I signed up for my shoulder course. So I took that when I was, that was my next one, and then from there, it was just the same kind of stuff. I mean, gymnastics is a blessing and a curse that everything gets hurt. So I kind of have to be a little bit okay with all the different joints, and so I was like, all right, I'll tackle the shoulder for 3 months with Mike, and then I'll learn more there. And then I'll tackle, whatever it is. And at that point I was like, all right, I'm doing all this already. I might as well formalize it. So in late 2014, I formally like pulled the trigger on doing my home study for my SCS. And then, the rest is kind of history, but that is how I got to champion, which I can explain later if you want.
So with the SCS, did you sit for the, I know there's a few ways to do SCS. Like if you have like a mentorship, or you can just sit for the exam.
Yep.
Which one did you do?
Yeah. So I did the home study course, and there's pros and cons to both, really. And we get this question all the time in the podcast, but it's sometimes hard to explain in depth. So I use myself and my buddy Joe Myron as a perfect kind of parallel here, because he was very similar to me, active in football, wanted to do sports. He did a residency in Delaware, I think, and did the full 2-year live clinic, all that kind of stuff. And I did partially financially, like I couldn't afford to move somewhere and like put more debt on my back. But then also I really wanted to continue working in the clinic and coaching, that I was like, maybe I can do a home study course because I have a lot of exposure hours with shadow. There's an AT that I was working with at gymnastics, and I could get some stuff from her shadowing. And I just figured out where the advanced EMR course was. And I flew down and stayed there for 3 days, did that. I studied for a bunch of stuff at home, and I took the online prep courses and just did like all the stuff that I could. And I personally, I mean, there's pros and cons of both. The pro in the clinical model of a residency is you get really good hands-on mentorship and clinical skills, which I did not get. I had to kind of learn my way through that with extra shadowing. So Joe told me that he got like really good, people were sitting there showing him how to post-op knees and ACLs and high level stuff, strength and conditioning, nutrition, like all this stuff he was learning really, really good. Whereas I didn't have that, which is a negative. The flip side of that is that while you do get a lot of, this is my opinion from what I've heard from other people, it's not everywhere, I don't want to say that, but you get a really good didactic overview of the academics there, but you get a very narrow system. You get someone's tunnel vision on what they think about how they treat, how they go for literature interpretation, what they want to teach, their academic concepts. And the benefit for me is I really had a no holds barred. I could learn whatever subject I wanted from whatever authors. I could read any papers that I wanted, any books, take any courses, and I wasn't stuck in a box of learning that. And I think that was I think that was one of the biggest things that made me a better therapist early on and feel more comfortable. Is I was like, Mackenzie, Paul Hodges, McGill, whatever. I could learn from Mike. I could learn from Cressy. I could learn from Boyle. Like everybody that I wanted to learn from, I could just buy books and I could just take research from. And so I think it's really all about where you see yourself going. I think we recommend if there's clinical affiliations or connections associated with that residency that you really want to do, like pro football, pro baseball, whatever it is, it's a great option. And I think if you really want more of that hands-on clinical skill teaching, it's a really great option too. I think that if you're looking more for the academic, you still want to work, you'd like to have a broader depth and kind of adopt your own shadowing hours, which is how I got the champion. I think the home study course is more option. And I will say that I felt very underprepared for acute EMR and acute field management because I did my home study course and I just stopped doing it. I took the test and I did some some coverage with like local gymnastics medical meets, but I did it one time and I was like, this is not for me. Like this, I don't think this is for the SES, to be honest. That's a topic for discussion. I don't think we should be doing on field management unless you literally would do it every single day. I think ATC should get your ATC degree. But I was like, I studied all this stuff academically. I actually did really well on the emergency medicine part of my test. But I just did not have the clinical skills. Like you have to spine board 100 people with 5 other people teaching you how to do it before you really feel comfortable and like referring stuff for fractures and kidney issues and stuff like that. Like that's crazy. You know what I mean? You have to be really, really good at that. And I, despite putting a lot of hours in studying that stuff, I never felt comfortable doing it live. So yeah, differences there.
Yeah, kind of similar to like online classes now, like things that we're learning online definitely don't translate to when you're in person practicing with someone and getting that feedback right there from your professor.
Yeah, that's how I ended up at Champion actually, is when I was taking I think Evidence in Motion was what I took for my review course after I studied for a long time. I paid for the review course and all of the research was from anything from the shoulder and the elbow in sports was from Mike and Lenny. And then anything from the knee, especially with ACL cartilage, was like Kevin, Mike, Lenny, Rafael Escamilla. Like they were all like this Birmingham crew that kind of like went out everywhere. So I was like, well, Mike and Lenny are, 40 minutes away. And I don't know. I think I actually went to SFMA and I met Urson there, and Lenny happened to be taking the course. I think it was in like 2014. He was doing it in Boston too. So I didn't really know him, but I was just like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm Dave, like, good to meet you. And we just like chatted real quick. And then like Mike actually swung by to say hi to Greg Rose, who was teaching it. And I just kind of like quickly said hello and, just kind of got face value. And I was just emailing Mike back and forth a lot about patients, and I bought a bunch of his courses. I ended up buying all of his courses. So I'm sure he saw my name, repetitively. When I was studying for the SCS a year later, everything was from them. And I was like, I might as well, like, even if it's not for the SCS to study, I should just go down and shadow, because I'd never seen a UCL reconstruction or a pitcher or a slap tear or stuff like that. So I was like, I'm not going to see these people in the clinic. I might as well just go from the best. So I shifted my schedule to take patients from 6 to 12. And then I would drive down at 1 and I would shadow till 5. And then I would drive back and I would coach till 9. And I would do that a few days per week. And then over the course of, I think, up 2 months of shadowing, they were like, do you like your job? And I was like, funny you should ask that. How it worked out.
Wow. So that was in 2014, you said? Or
I started my boards at the end of 14, or maybe at the very beginning of end of 13, start of 14, whatever. But I took my boards in 2015, the middle of 15, when I had just started. I remember like I passed just after I started. I started in February of 2015 for Champion. So I've been there almost 5 years, or 16, whatever that is. So that 2-year process. And then I passed like as soon as I got my job. And then I think the next year I did my SCS for a year after that. So yeah, I think it was 2 years of studying, and then from 13 to 15, and then I took it. And then in 16, maybe, and then from 15 to 16, I did SCS, my CS.
So when you were shadowing there, were you just like shadowing like you and I did when we were going into PT school, like
Mhm.
asking questions to the therapist and just trying to learn more about what was going on?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just, I mean, Champion was a very small clinic. And so I would drive down there and just hang out and just, for most of the time, it was just me being quiet. I was just like watching and trying to write notes and trying to learn and trying to listen. And I would ask questions about like, cause they had a lot of pro baseball players there and that was like prime time for UCL. So I was just kind of like, oh, like, why are you doing this? Or like, how you guys think about that? And then I would just stay around as long as I could and just try to pick their brains of whoever came in. And then I was studying and stuff. And then yeah, I don't really remember how the conversation happened between Mike and Lenny. I mean, I'd met Lenny and then, oh, I know what it was. They, after seeing me shadow or just, I guess, believing that I was a good therapist, started doing a lot more research into like my online work. And I had started my company in 2014 Shift. So like, I think a lot of my blogs and stuff were up that were like a lot of research based. And I was like, staying up way too late. I was very unhealthy actually with how much I was working back then. But I think they saw a lot of my work in the gymnastics field and they kind of saw how it could fit their model. I don't think it was that they bought into me being an amazing therapist. They were like, oh, we do baseball. This is like another plug we could put into our circuit board of like, teach you our system. We can help you. You can take our overflow because they had so many people that were trying to see them at that time and they were so busy. So I could take some of the Gen Pop people and then also I could kind of start building my network in gymnastics. And then yeah, that's kind of how it started. And I was in the process of slowly telling my other job that I was going to stop and move on, but I had to cut all my insurance ties. So it took me like a month or so to cancel all my insurance in network benefits because we're out of network. And so I was like, Lenny, I can start in like 2 or 3 weeks. Then he like called me the next day. He's like, well, my wife's in labor. So you're going to take my schedule today. And I was like, I'm in. So I started the first day. That's how we always know how long I've been working there because Lenny's daughter's birthday is the day that I started.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So you said you started Shift. So what was your inspiration for starting Shift, and how does that kind of play into everything? Like,
Yeah.
was it during your first job and you were kind of like missing, the sports stuff that you were passionate about doing PT before, and so it was a way for you to get back into that, or?
Yes, I'll be 100% honest. I started Shift as a blog and it only became a company because I was spending so much money on Con Ed. I spent, I guess I'm not afraid to say this. I spent $10,000 my first year on Con Ed out of school and then 8,000 my following year. So I didn't take any money from my company, but I was consulting and doing traveling work and speaking so that I could buy more books and go to more courses and do all that kind of stuff. Because it was a weird mix for me. I had as you probably heard from Urson, I had a massive chip on my shoulder from getting kicked out. And I was really in a bad headspace mentally. And it was like, screw the world. I'm going to I'll show you like that kind of like just ego fueled, like this
I
kind
mean, how do you bounce back from that? Like that's
of, yeah, that was a rough patch, man. I've had some struggles with mental health and depression. And that was one of the bouts that I had was from that. I was very lucky to have my friends, like one of my friends who was home from high school is a speech writer for a senator. So he was very good at helping me articulate the letter that I needed and telling me what to say and the key talking points. And like, he really helped me a lot through that. Shout out Josh. So that was a big part of it. But then also I just had like good friend support and good family support, to kind of like get through that. My really good friend, other Josh Fox that I went to Springfield with, he was like really good at talking me off the ledge a couple of times when it just feels like the world is all black and it's super heavy and you start getting really weird thoughts about it. It's always going to be this way. And you say it like leaks into other areas of your life. You're like, okay, if my work's going poor, that means I'm unhealthy. That means I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just like a really dark spiral happens. So he was really good at kind of being like, dude, like it sucks. Like, don't get me wrong. This really sucks, but you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like worst case scenario, you leave with the bachelor's and I had 200,000 in debt. He was like, you'll get another job. You'll go to some other school. You'll go to some grad school. Like, and it will really suck. Don't get me wrong, but this is not the end of it. You know what I mean? So I think that like having people, because you're so emotional when that stuff happens, right? You can't see, and anyone who's never had mental health issues probably understands this, where everyone's like, oh, just get over it. It's so easy. But like, you really see through blurred goggles. You can't understand the rational side of it. So
yeah.
Friends and support networks were very helpful for me to do that. You know what I mean? So they helped me get over the hump. And then once like I kind of got my hooks in and I got back in and I kind of got back to my summer clinical. I was really lucky that Keith, the guy who I mentored under for my last ortho clinical, was really helpful too. He was really helpful to get me back on my feet and kind of give me the right guidance. And then once I actually graduated, my graduation ceremony was a handshake, and they mailed me my certificate. But when I finally got a job and I finally got in, I was like, whoa, I'm gonna tear this place up right now. That's why I'm such a geek, man, because I had those 2 years where I was like this weird mixture of like chip on shoulder plus I just have a really natural curiosity. Like I really like, that's just a personality trait of mine that I want to understand things and I really want to know things. So when it was combined with gymnastics and I was like, saw so much work that could be done to help people. There's a lot of unnecessary suffering in gymnastics for little kids. So I was like, okay, I have this like fuel slash I have this, I want to help people slash I really like reading books. So those three things came together really well. And for those 2 years, I worked too much. I was working like 90 to 100 hours and I don't recommend that at all between a few jobs. But it did really fill in a lot of the gaps that I had in my knowledge base for like mastering the joints and really understanding biomechanics and seeing how pain science and biomechanics are really more overlapping than different and stuff like that. So, but it allowed me to network a lot. Courses let me network. Online blogging was kind of like a vessel for me to share my thoughts, but then also meet new people, which is how that led to, the SES, which led to Lenny and Mike. And then eventually they just asked me, they're like, hey, do you like your job? And I was like, not really. I was going to leave my job anyways, just because I was kind of tired of the factory, and they just offered it to me. And I spent Mike Reinhold probably doesn't know the story, but I spent 2 weeks preparing my cover letter, my resume, everything super in depth. And my interview and my hire was a half-hour Starbucks meeting. So I was like, okay, all right. Sweet. Yeah, but that's how it came to be, man. And yeah, it's been 5 years at Champion. I'm like one of the luckiest dudes in the whole world because I was the first external hire they took for PT, and I wouldn't be where I am with any of my stuff without their mentorship. So,
wow.
Yep.
So when you first started doing your continuing education, how did you like not fall into the hole of like I feel like when I see something new in research, I get like really passionate about it, and then I look up all this stuff about it, but I don't want to pigeonhole myself into like if I just did the SFMA.
I totally did that, and I learned from my mistakes.
Yeah.
I went to I don't know when I took it. This might be a later example, but I took a needling course and studied everything, and then every single person who came to my clinic got needled for like a week, and people were like, I don't want this. And I was like, I think it's good for you. The research says it. And they were like, I'm leaving. And I was like, okay. So I made a bunch of terrible mistakes. I just like, I made every new grad rookie mistake you could possibly think of when it really comes to like content and stuff. Like I would go to a course, only use that course and pigeonhole myself. And then I would defend that system like on my sword. And somebody would say on Facebook that like something else is better. And I was like, no, you can't do that. Right. Like I remember I spent 6 months learning very in-depth SIJ, malalignment, in and out, like all that stuff, in flares, out flares. I knew every correction. I was like super good with landmarks. And then the research came out that it wasn't that valid and that it doesn't have good palpation reliability and that it really wasn't that big of a difference with leg length and structurally southing stuff. And I was like, these dudes are clowns. They don't know anything. Like these people are idiots, like whatever. And then like 6 months later, I was like, I'm an idiot. I was like, dude, I can't fix someone's freaking hips. I'm like, I'm a moron. And I was lying to myself with their position. And I was like, palpating through just like skin when I was like, yeah, I definitely fixed it. Yep, definitely. And they're like, my back still hurts. I'm like, I definitely fixed it though. Like just stupid stuff like that. And so I just got more of an ego check during those 2 years. And after that situation, but then also I think a really good example too is I think Urson and Mike would agree with this. I was working with Urson because I was treating a lot of like in general population chronic pain, like people who needed David Butler's work and who needed that kind of stuff. And then my transition, my focus shifted towards athletes. And I think that the rules don't change, but how you apply them do when you work with high level pro athletes that are doing things in sports that are extremely high force. And so I started to shift more into the world of biomechanics and pathomechanics and really in-depth knowing the joints well, which I didn't before because now I needed to know more about the force velocity curves and about sports and strength conditioning and stuff. And so I kind of organically moved more towards treating that way. And I treat both now, depending on what people present in front of me. But like the fact that people still live in camps of pain science versus biomechanics or, it's just manual therapy versus exercise or modalities versus not. It's like, dude, if you read the literature and you look at a bird's eye view, there's a time and a place for all this kind of stuff. And this is the world we're living in where people are heroes behind social media keyboards. But when rubber meets the road and they're treating people and they don't want to, change their ways, they fall short with their outcomes. And so I think you really have to realize that it's more overlapping than it is different, and you just pull out the right thing you need for the person in front of you. You know what I mean? And so it's based on the population you see, but I've learned just as much from Mike and Lenny than I have from Urson and other people like David Butler and Paul Hodges and them. I think it's almost all the same. And if you try to let your ego be the thing that says you only know PRI, or you're only SFMA, or you only work in this and McKenzie, you're gonna miss a lot of people who need help, you know. And I think that you're doing the patient a disservice because you're thinking about, you want to use fancy words and do the fancy thing you learned at a course, and not what's going to help this person get better. And so I'm lucky that Mike and Lenny and everybody else, Dan and Mike Scaduto and Lisa, they're super humble. We all learn from each other. I turned to Lenny yesterday and asked him a patient about horizontal bucket tears that I just didn't have the research on the top of my head. And he like gave me a quick answer. The patient didn't get offended at all. Didn't think I was a bad therapist because I asked Lenny. I was like, I just want to get you the best help. And I just forget what the latest research says. And that was it. There was no ego. There was no worries about it. So I try my best to constantly be just finding new little tidbits.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's really good advice. Like for new grads, like I feel like, you don't know what you don't know. And right now I feel like I don't know anything, even when I'm in clinic and I'm telling patients something in my head, I'm like, well, it could be this, or we could do this or that, depending on like what lens you want to look at it. And so I don't know, I'm struggling with trying to figure out what is the best approach for an individual, which, will take time. But what
do you mean? You mean individual as you, as a person, of what you want to learn, or individual like what to do for the patient in front of you?
What to do for the patient in front of me. I feel like when I go to certain clinics, I've only had like 2 rotations so far, but I'll fall into the pattern of what the other therapists do.
Definitely.
Instead of doing like what I want to do.
Yeah. And I respect that in a way, but you have to remember your job right now is not to kill anybody. That's why you need to get your degree first, right? And we see a lot of students come through. We have like 3 to 4 every year at least, and like we have quite a few have waiting 2 or 3 years to kind of get a champion. And some of them, not all of them, not any of the students who are currently at champion as of 8, 12, 20. But we get some students who come through and they're really motivated. They've studied a lot outside of school. They really want to do well, and they come to our clinic and they very much are not open-minded to learning our system as maximally as they can, and then moving on and making their own system. They very much question some of the stuff that we do, which we're fine with. Like if someone questions a rationale, like I love having students because they keep me on my toes and they make me really explain why I'm doing things. And they're sometimes like, oh yeah, I should probably think about that a little differently. Or like I should change my ways on that. But there's been some students who really think they're above, us.
Yeah.
But, they think that their experience studying and not treating people is better than the cumulative experience of 5 therapists who have 100 years between us. And it's like, like there's a difference there. There's a difference between a professional discussion and disagreement, which I love and I get all the time, and somebody who feels like they're one-upping us because Mike's very well known or Lenny's very well known. They kind of get this weird bravado, and those kids do poorly because they lose so much ability to learn from everybody. So as a student, I actually think you should adopt a little bit of the mold of the clinic that you're in. 1, because you're trying to get through school, but 2, because you don't have a system yet. You haven't treated enough people to have a system. You know what I mean? Like it's like asking someone to take their driver's test when they're on the 3rd day of their permit school. It's like, of course you're going to hit headaches. You know what I mean? So I think the better advice that we give to students is to really soak up the system fully of what you learn, how they do things, pick up their manual techniques, pick up their exercise progressions and do it. And, have in the back of your head, I don't know if I would do this, and if you want to bring that up in a private discussion on a separate room, but never in the middle of a clinic be like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. The patient's like, what? Why wouldn't you do that? It's really awkward. So like make a note of it. And then maybe like over lunch, right? Or like on the way out, like, hey, I was just thinking something different. Like, can you explain to me why you're doing that? Or like, I'm thinking this, can you like, let me know maybe why I'm wrong? And like, take it from an empathetic point of view. And you have a really great discussion. Your clinical instructor will respect you much more than kicking the door in, right? So just from your 3 clinicals, your 5 clinicals, pick up like the tidbits and the systems. And then once you get out, based on what's in front of you, mangle up and mold your system. And that's exactly what I've done in gymnastics. Is I consider myself probably 60 to 70% champion and all the stuff that I've learned. And then 30% of it is my flair based on what I know from gymnastics and based on what I know from CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting and other coaches I've worked with that Mike and Lenny and those guys haven't seen. And they would probably say the same thing for their niches of baseball or, golf or rowing with Lisa or whatever it is. So I think you should be. I mean, like people are like, oh, don't be a sheep, right? Like I think you kind of should be a sheep in the beginning because you don't have any experience. You don't know what's going on. And you also have no skin in the game. Like you treat these people and you leave, right? You're going to go on to clinical. Like we have a full caseload that we still have to kind of help these people through their problems maybe when you leave. And so we have the weight of our outcomes on us, whereas a student maybe is still riding under the license of somebody. So I guess that's not a popular answer, but I think thinking for yourself and being professionally disagreeing with someone is very different than what I think some students do, which is feel as though they know everything because they've studied and taken some of courses and they've gone extra mile beyond. And then most like everybody will say you get a year out like you were with me because I did that exact same thing. I thought I was the man, which is probably one of the reasons I got kicked out. And I completely had to take my foot out of my mouth like a year later when I realized I'm an idiot and I don't know a tenth of what I should know.
So with everything that you know now, like out of all the certifications and courses that you've taken, which ones do you use on a regular basis? And then what courses would you recommend like new grads, like essential courses, like you have to take this course, it was life-changing?
I'm laughing because I'm going to get in trouble, but my CSCS out of all the things I've taken that I use the most and I feel have been the most beneficial is my strength conditioning degree. And I tell everyone now, there's a girl at our clinic. She's a strength and conditioning intern. She's Taylor. She's going to grad school for PT. She's applying now. And she was actually a gymnast that I coached. This is a weird full circle, but she was like, what can I do to better prepare me for PT school? And I was like, get your CSCS because there are some programs that do a phenomenal job of teaching really good strength and conditioning principles, but we're like that's half of what we do. Exercise progressions and loading. You know what I mean? And I took 2 courses on that fully in my education. And I think other programs are different. We had, and I'm not trying to knock Springfield. I love the program, right? But like they had a phenomenal cardiovascular pulmonary like program, like ridiculous. Neurology, unreal. Acute care, integ, ridiculous. Like if I was going into a neuro job, I'd be like, I went to the best school for that. But in sports ortho, in terms of like the caliber of what we were learning in the other 4 departments, I was like, okay, if we're going to learn about advanced neuro and cardio, I should really know what to do post-op day 1 with a fresh biceps tenodesis. I felt that when I was getting out. I was terrified of post-op and I didn't really have good experience there. Even though on my clinicals, I saw some of those, I felt like I should have gotten more background in my last few years of that. Like I should also, if I'm going to learn ventilator precautions, I should learn ACL return to sport programs. I should learn how to deadlift and I should learn how to build a basic strength conditioning program. And I don't think that's a knock on my school. I think that's a knock on all schools. I think that we do a very poor job of preparing ortho or people who might want to go sports for just basic function, right? It's not that you're going to work with, the Red Sox when you get out, but like someone who has a construction job and is swinging a hammer all day and blows their back out and gets a very hot sciatic nerve. Well, teaching them how to get back to their swinging of a hammer is going to be a lot of strength conditioning principles. And so I would say if I could do it all over again, SFMA I felt was very good for me early on because I needed a better system of movement. That was my fault. That was not my school's fault. They actually did teach a lot of good movement stuff, but I just didn't really connect the dots well. So I felt that the SFMA was very good for me. I felt that the Mackenzie was an addition on top of what I learned at school. My spine course was very good at Springfield. Shout out Julia Shevin. But she did teach a really good spine course. And so I just felt like I just needed more because back pain's complicated, man. And same thing with shoulder stuff. Like I felt like I had a little bit of shoulder stuff for like exercise progressions, but like I was nowhere ready to understand the joint fully. And the studies that Mike had done were way more in depth and advanced about capsular ligaments and all that kind of stuff from Birmingham that I didn't really get exposure to in my program. So yeah, I would not do a PT course. I would take a CSCS course first.
Yeah, that's actually been something that I've had on my list. I don't have my CSCS, but it's definitely something that
it's worth it.
That I want to pursue. Yeah,
it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. I think it gives you a broad spectrum exposure to what I think you're going to use for returning to basic movement patterns, right? Everyone should squat, hinge, push, pull, single leg, split squat, whatever. And everybody has to get back to that somehow. in some way, shape, or form, whether that's picking your 2-year-old child up off the ground, or whether that's deadlifting 500, or whether that's opening doors and not letting your shoulder hurt and driving, or whether that's trying to, lift and do bench pressing. So I feel like the principles in the CSCS, the principles in the textbook in the course from the CSCS, and I went to like Cressy's and did some workshops there. I was the only PT at Cressy's performance seminar. I remember that. Like I went to Cressy's, I bought Boyle's book. I read a lot of stuff online from Mike Robinson, like a whole like Charlie Weingroff is a really good resource too, because he's kind of like in blended world. But I learned more about getting people safely back to what they want to do from strength and conditioning coaches in that textbook than I think I did from my later years on my clinicals.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, I learned a lot about getting people out of pain and getting back to their lifting a cupboard. You're like lifting your arm to the second cupboard with 18 degrees of shoulder range of motion from my insurance companies. I learned how to, help somebody put their shirt on, and I helped the basic functionals, but they were like, no, I want to run, or like, no, I want to like go back to the gym and lift. And I was like, oh, I didn't get that part of the manual, so I was getting them like 70%. And then a lot of patients were coming back in 2 or 3 weeks and they were like, I'm not better, or like every time I'm good in my life, but every time I try to go for a long walk with my kids, or every time I try to go back to the gym and work out as a fitness thing, or I want to go hiking, my knees really hurt and like my back starts flaring up again. And I was like, I don't really know what to do now. I was like, I could throw some random, what I was doing, which was the mistake, was throwing random basic exercises at people and making them harder, right? I was throwing like basic squats and I was like, okay, I guess stand on this Bosu ball and like catch this thing and like, let's put a TheraBand around you because I saw it in a course video. And I was like, yeah, this looks hard. You look like you're having challenging. And what I really should have just done is a 2-week goblet squatting program and a single leg program. That would have been better, faster, and like making stuff hard to make it hard, just because I was like, I don't know what to bill for your 15 units. So I'm just going to do all these random exercises. And then that's how it goes, man. That's the reality of hurt someone's feelings. I'm sorry if you're a clinic owner and you hear that, but manual for 15 minutes to get my code when I didn't think they needed it because it paid more. And I was doing TheraX for a bunch of times. And then I would put a heat pack on them and put stim on them because it made us money and I had to do my notes. That's definitely my error as a therapist, not the model. There's models that do it better, but that was me being an idiot.
So with there's new research coming out like every day. How do you stay on top of new research, new evidence, and not get overwhelmed by it? Like, I feel like it can be very overwhelming thinking about everything that comes out and trying to stay on top of it.
Yes, I have academic ADD like no one's business. As you can see from probably the shelf, I buy books and I read a whole bunch of them and I get distracted because I read other things. So there's 2 layers to it. One is I don't think you should be afraid to generally pursue what you're interested in, even if it has nothing to do with what your clients are in front of you. So like I am really deep in the world of stress, neuroendocrinology, and epigenetics. And I love reading neurochemistry textbooks and I read, weird stuff that I would never probably read in another world. But my work with gymnastics and what's happening internationally in my consulting work is just, that's a really important topic. So like, I'm not afraid to read that kind of stuff because it genuinely interests me, which is a big part of it. And I think that's something people should be. I think people feel bad for reading things that they're not supposed to in their academic world because they think it's going to be taking away from staying up on the latest research for ACL or whatever it is, right? And generally, like, they read stuff they don't really like rather than reading stuff they do like and they're passionate about and building their niche around that. So I think that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is I think it's really important to streamline the topics that you either see in the clinic or you want to start seeing in the clinic. So like for me, for example, it's like low back. I was seeing like 6 of my 14 patients were low back patients, right? From all walks of life. And I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I read all of those books because I like found that those were necessary. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to get more into the athletic shoulder and gymnasts and stuff like that. So that's why I took Mike's course. I wasn't seeing a ton of gymnasts for shoulder problems, but I was genuinely interested in that because I know like guys have a lot of problems with their shoulders in gymnastics, right? So I was doing that. And the way I like tactically would go about it is I would find the authors who were at the cutting edge of that research field. And I would tag those authors in PubMed and I would go through it and look at all the studies that they had made in the last 10 years. I would read the abstracts, right? You start with like 50 or 60, you pull it down to like 20 that are like either available or have good like external validity for like what you're trying to apply it to. And I'm like, okay, these 20 are cool. Like what 4 or 5 are like really sound interesting. And I would get those, in some way, shape, or form. Some I paid for, some I would get through our students. I would do that, and then I would save up money and I would buy the textbooks that were the surgical textbooks, right? So the hip world is a very good example. I learned a lot about like the squatter's hip, the FAI hip, the classic like athletic pubalgia. But the gymnasts that I was seeing, the dancers I was seeing, the professional ballet dancers I was seeing had hip mechanisms that were nowhere like what I was reading in those textbooks. Like, especially when FAA was getting popular, like in 2014, 15, I was like, this does not make sense at all. This is totally different than what I know as a gymnastics coach or as someone who did gymnastics. And so I was like, that doesn't make sense. But like Mark Safran and I think his name is Dr. Salovart. I'm going to totally mess that up. But also like Dr. Kelly in New York City, they were very prominent and they were seeing a lot of people for hip micro instability. And I was like, this sounds like more on what I need. So I went through and tagged all the research articles that they had read, and I read probably like 30 or 40 of those articles, and then I kept their alerts up in PubMed. And the ones that were like, you can subscribe to journals, like articles, and like out of like 2 or 3 articles that come up monthly, like our journal like publications, there's like 1 or 2 articles that I think are really interesting for me to learn. So I would like grab those every once in a while. But I get email updates from all the journals: Journal of Elbow and Shoulder Surgery, hip preservation surgery, JOSPT, obviously ISPT, but also like American Journal of Sports Medicine. Like, those are combined journals with doctors and surgeons. And I felt that if I pushed myself to learn the higher level academic stuff that surgeons were publishing, that would probably make me a better therapist. And then I bought, like for the hip stuff, I bought 2 volumes of Dr. Kelly's book, which was a $800 worth of investment. But I read the entire thing, and I know a lot about hip now. I skipped the surgical stuff, and like I don't really need to know if they use 8 millimeters versus 6 millimeters and like some of their sutures or whatever that is. But I just read all the other stuff, and like reading the surgical and the biomechanical stuff that they think about made me a much better clinician. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer, but email alerts, topics you're interested in, topics you want to get interested in, and then like not being afraid to read stuff. And then on top of all that, you have to make time for it and do it. I think most people don't want to put the work in to read and be up to date. It's a lot of mornings at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock before you go treat.
That was actually going to be my next question, is when do you find time for all this?
Yeah.
You seem like so busy.
Yeah, this starts to morph into a conversation more about, personal values and what you want to do. But number one is I have help that allows me to do this. Mike and Lenny are amazing, right? So they allow me a lot of flexibility and time to do this, and they value it. So I value it. They help pay for courses when we go to places and stuff like that. So that's a big part of it. But yeah, man, there's no golden answer about this. You want to do it or you don't. You either make time for it or you don't. Do you want to watch 2 hours of Netflix a night, or do you want to go to bed an hour earlier and wake up so you can read some articles? That's what it comes down to. Do you want to spend all your money at the bar buying rounds for your friends every weekend, Thursday, Friday, or do you want to buy more textbooks? One less night at the bar for 2 months, you buy a textbook. 1 less hour of Netflix instead of 3. You wake up earlier and you feel better and you don't feel like crap all day in the clinic. And so early Dave was spending a lot of money on things he didn't like to impress people he didn't want to be with. And so I accumulated debt, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend on things that I cared about. And then I was like, this kind of sucks. I worked for half my life. I'd rather not feel crappy at work because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm tired. So I'm going to party a little less, and I'm going to read a little more, and I'm going to work out a little more instead of spending all my time elsewhere. And that helped a lot for my personal life, but then also it helped me accumulate the ability to buy stuff. And with my company, I haven't taken a paycheck in my company in 8 years. I've drawn out some money for legitimate business expenses. Like if I spend a month writing a course, I have to cover my time from the clinic, but I've probably taken 2% to 3% of the company's money in the last 7 years so that I can put it back into buying stuff for the company and books and textbooks. And yeah, some people tolerate their job and some people find it as a career and a passion. I guess it's just different, right? If your passion is sports cars or, doing stuff that's expensive and you like that, and spend your money on that and be happy. But I have some stuff that I spend my money on too outside of, life that I think is deeply meaningful to me. Like I enjoy music, I enjoy concerts, I enjoy playing some video games here and there, but like it's part of my weekly schedule and I don't mind doing it when I'm on my off time. But that's very different than just pouring money down the drain because you want to just buy stuff and try to impress people.
Yeah. Do you have like a schedule blocked out of when it's like time to work and then time to like do education and read, and then it's like, okay, time to wind down for bed, play a video game, read a fun book, for like
It's funny you mentioned that because I've gone through a roller coaster with this. in my own personal life. So I had the first 2 years, I've been out 2008 years. I've been at 8 years from school. So the first 2 years were unhealthy, way too much, blackout, just work. Like I was, it's ridiculous now that I look back on it, but I would wake up at 4:30. I would read from 5 till 6. I would treat from 7 to 3. I would work out for an hour. I would go coach until 9. I would go home and I would read some more and I would go to bed at 10. That was my life for a long time. I would coach Saturday morning, come home, work, do more work till about 6, maybe hang out with some of my friends, wake up at like 8 the next morning, drive home from my friend's house, and I would do work all day Sunday. It was ridiculous. It was super unhealthy. And I gave myself some serious mental health issues because of it. So like I went through that till I was like 25. And then I just got to the point where I was super burnt out and I was really tired and I was really just like cranky all the time. And so when I was 26, so like 2031 now, so 5 years ago, 2015, 16, I was like, I need to not do this anymore. Like I really need to change. So I actually had a period where I was like really going through a lot of personal life stuff. And I was like working on things that I think were more important in my personal life in terms of like feeling happier. And I got rid of a lot of stuff that I was doing to cope in a very unhealthy way. I was, like I said, I was drinking less. I was going out less. I was buying less stuff. I was just like genuinely more happy. And that helped a lot. So I found a really good work-life balance for probably like 2 years. And I was like really feeling like I was doing well. And that was when I first started my job with Mike and Lenny. So I was like, I went from a period of like, I worked so hard the first year a champion because I just wanted to obviously do well. But then after I settled in, I kind of like had better balance around my schedule. And then in 2017, 18, after like 2 years of feeling good and kind of doing it, I let myself unfortunately slide back into an unhealthy relationship with work, an unhealthy relationship with exercise, and like kind of just doing things I wasn't like, things I just didn't want to do. It's not where I want to spend my time. I don't want to go out and stand around the bar with people I, don't really know that well for an hour and a half. It's like my best friends that are coming into town, or it's like a wedding or like something really cool. Then like, I'm totally down. But I was doing it every weekend just because I was like scared to deal with the real unhappiness in my life. Right. So that happened again. I just started working more because of what was happening in the gymnastics world. Right. The gymnastics world exploded with the scandal and my company took off. And I wish it didn't, because it means that people were not getting abused. But a lot of Division I schools and a lot of countries were asking me to travel and to do stuff. So I was like, I would fly to the UK and speak and then fly back and start my schedule the next morning. And then I would coach all day. And like, I was going like a lot of places traveling.
Oh, wow.
And I just like felt as though I was like, this is the moment, you know what I mean? Like you got to strike while the iron's hot. Like I've worked so hard for 5 years. I got to like capitalize on this. And so I was like working. And I slid back downhill again. And it was last year that I started really pulling myself back together and being like, listen, work will always be there. Problems will always be here. There's always things to do. There's always people to treat. And I started putting much more firm boundaries on my schedule, which is where I like really made a schedule that was like, I'm off by like 8 o'clock, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. And yeah, it like went pretty well. And then the pandemic happened and I really got shook about like, okay, now what really matters. You know what I mean? Like sleeping a lot more in the pandemic because I had more time and I was like working hard during the day, but then really turning off and like talking to my brother more, talking to my family more. Cause I was like, it's just a weird vibe. You know what I mean? We're all in this weird vibe now. So I've gotten much better about it now, but yeah, I would say now Monday through Thursday, in terms of like my normal day to day, I'm very aggressive in how hard and how focused I am. So I wake up at 5 and I read for an hour, but like that first hour now is more just like personal development books. It's very chill. It's not like jumping on my computer right away and answering emails or doing text messages, right? It's like my hour. So I like love listening to music. I love like just drinking tea and like watching, or reading books or whatever it is, staying off my phone. So I do that for an hour. And then sometimes I bought stuff for a home gym. So like sometimes I like work out my apartment. Sometimes I go to Champion and I work out if I feel like I need the equipment there. I'll try to be very strict about my treatment hours of being within my 20 to 25 hours. That's kind of what I want to allocate. Because if I don't set a firm boundary on 20 to 25, I go 30 in the clinic and then I'm coaching 15 and then I'm doing shift 15 and it boils up easily. But now I'm like a pretty firm. I try to stay 20 to 25. And then Fridays I work from home. I coach in the afternoon when we're not in a pandemic, but I use the morning to like sleep in till like 6 or 7 and like wake up and like get a lot of that busy work done that I need to do. So it's not weighing on top of me, for the weekend. And then, yeah, usually like Friday night, I kind of like try to unplug and I might do a little bit of work on a Saturday morning just for like stuff I'm interested in. But I really try to take most of Saturday and Sunday completely off to do whatever. And that's really been a struggle for me, is to not judge myself on not working. And Dan Pope, my buddy, and I share this quite a bit as a conversation, is like, if I'm not working, I usually feel really bad about it. Like I should be working.
Yeah.
And also if I'm reading like personal development stuff, or I'm journaling, or I'm reading like things that are not related to PT at all, I used to be like, you should be writing a course right now, or you should be reading research right now. And it's still a struggle with me to like really turn off and like really allow myself to deload. And it's actively something I need to work on as a vice, because it's still like, I'll just let myself, like I'll literally get busy and look up from like textbooks, and it'll be like 6 hours later. And I'll be like, I was supposed to be hanging out. I was supposed to be like going to do something, and like I'll miss time because I'm like supposed to be doing, whatever else. So now I'm pretty firm on trying to not work past 7 or 8 every day. And then I try my best to be done at 3 o'clock on Friday. And if I need to do a little bit on Saturday, I will, or Sunday night. I usually do that, but I'm trying to be much better about that. And I've been coming along quite well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. It took 10 years to get here, but we're here.
Have you ever tried any like yoga or like meditation to try and help with like stress and like racing thoughts and thinking you should be doing something when you're just trying to chill out?
Yeah, I've tried a lot of things. So I have read this like top shelf that I have here the top books over there are all things that have like completely changed my life. And most of those books are about mental health, depression, anxiety, meditation, like all that kind of stuff, because that's just that's what I've personally dealt with quite a bit. And so I think for me, I've tried really hard to meditate, like really hard. And it's not for me. You know what I mean? It's just not my vibe. I've tried probably like 2 to 3 cycles of 2 to 3 months in different ways, shapes, and forms. And it's not for me. However, reading and journaling really does that for me quite a bit. Like I think for me, reading stories or other topics that I'm interested in on personal development, especially as it relates to, the way you approach your life and how you reframe things and how you deal with chronic stress, reading the textbooks of stress, but then also reading some of the articles and some of the books from the psychology world, I go really slow, and I will get on a section, and I'll stop and I'll open my journal, and I'll really kind of deload or unload what's going on in my head based around that topic. So I'm doing a really good job of that. And for me, a combination of journaling open-endedly about like what's going on in my life, and combined with, I have one really good friend up here, Eva, who's like very similar age to me, and she's married. She has a young 1-year-old, but like we're able to really share a lot because we're close in age, you know what I mean? And Dan as well sometimes. So we can really unload like what's going on, and that helps a lot more. I find that sharing it with people you trust and who will not, obviously jump on you for it, and being able to walk through those problems together and talk out loud is much more beneficial for me than meditation. And so I use personally like running and working out is sometimes more like that for me. Like I'll do a long 60-minute row, bike, something workout, and I can really clear my head quite a bit. And that kind of resets me, as meditation I think might for others. But for me personally, I've found that it's really important that you dig into the hardest, deepest issues that you have in your personal life if you really want to make progress in how happy you feel. And so for me, it used to be work about like, that I didn't know that much, and then it was ego, and then I need to learn more. And then in the last few years, it's been much more about like, okay, what are like my greatest fears? What am I really terrified of? Like, what are my biggest insecurities? What am I really worried about with the future in my personal life? And being able to dig into those has helped me enormously to be happier at work and to be stuff like that. So I think that's kind of where I shifted the last few years, is digging into those. And I journal quite a bit on those. Some of those things are better left in a journal and not with other people, unless you trust them quite a bit. But a lot of those things I can talk about with close friends, and it helps quite a bit to just have them, not be hiding. I think a lot of people, and this is maybe not for your project, but I think a lot of people have, some things they're really not proud of, or they're not happy with in their own personal life, of the unhealthy coping mechanisms they use, whether that's drinking or social media or buying stuff or whatever it is. Or for me, it was over exercising and overworking. And I think that they know it's a really big problem, and they know they should deal with it and change it, but it's just too scary to think about. It's too intimidating. And so I think they just brush it under the rug, and they continue to do things to avoid their problems or numb themselves or escape from it. And then they wake up 5 years later and they're like, I hate this. I hate what I'm doing. And I found myself when I was 26 sliding downhill into that territory, which is why I kind of had such an aggressive turn the other way. So yeah, that's kind of how I personally deal with stress, with a combination of journaling, talking to other people. It's really important for me to like sleep a lot and eat well 90% of the time, and try to like exercise at least 5 days per week, because it starts to I don't feel worse. I do feel bad, but I'm much more irritable, and I'm much less able to control ruminating thoughts and the spiral and all that kind of stuff. If I don't take care of myself, I'm very irritable, and I'm very low mood, and I'm very angry at stuff that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like just stupid stuff. And I find myself very easily getting into a rabbit hole of some of the bouts of depression that I had when I was younger quite a bit. So I find that now I'm kind of getting in a rhythm of what works for me, just based on like the basics that I need to take care of myself. And I just need, I need time with friends. I need to go to the lake house that I have a couple times every summer. I need a week off a few times per week. I mean, a few times per year. I just need that stuff to keep the motor running in a healthy neutral and not in a fifth gear. Because if left to my own devices, I will completely redline myself, and I would just will work and work and work and work, and I'll just be really upset. So I think it's a different pocket, but yeah, you got to trial and error a little bit and figure out what works for you.
For sure. Absolutely. All right, Dave, I got one more question for you. This has been so awesome. I really appreciate you taking all this time. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh my God, I knew you were going to ask that. I can feel it in my bones. I felt it in my bones. Yes. So I had a plan, and then hashtag COVID. So my original plan, and I was either I had a lot of traveling offers to speak. I had a lot of traveling speaking offers here in the States for colleges, but I also had a lot of offers in the UK and Australia and some other places. So originally my plan was going to be to take a 3-month sabbatical and do that. I was going to start in the UK, go through Asia, kind of Australia, and then bounce around colleges and like other gyms and stuff. Not because I wanted a grand world tour, but like the gymnastics world just really desperately wants more education and more information. And I feel as though my unique perspective, not that I have the golden answers, I have a lot of friends in the space now that I think I could collect together and give people a lot of really useful tools. So I thought about that as like, okay, I can travel. I can kind of, get this little travel bug out of my system. I really wanted to like just Jeep life, up and down the coast and just kind of like feel how that goes from whatever. So I thought about doing that, but that's not going to happen. The other option I was going to do is I was actually considering, and I still am considering, getting a PhD in neuroscience to study stress, endocrinology, and epigenetics in youth sports. So all the geekiest of the geeky stuff, I'm very interested in that. And so that's still on my mind, but it's looking less like I want to do that because I just like being clinical and I like having freedom to learn. And I don't want to spend 3 years in a lab somewhere doing research. So I don't know. I might do a different route with that, but yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I see myself continuing to always treat, because I think that's kind of in the trench work. Even if I take a break, I feel as though I have an important social responsibility to help the world of gymnastics with the things that I've learned and the things that I can offer. So that's kind of in the realm. And then eventually, I don't know when it's going to be, but when the time of life sets into place where personal life and, whatever it happens, dating, girlfriend, whenever that comes, is like more important to me, I'm probably going to pull the trigger and just like stop working like half as much and just spend all my time with whatever that happens. I have no girlfriend, kids, married, whatever, but like that's really important to me. And so when that time comes, I'm going to be like the ultimate dad life, like minivan, rocking, like jorts, like it's going to be bad, right? Like I'm going to be the biggest soccer dad. So like I want to really make sure I'm setting myself up now to do that. And that might be in 6 months, that might be in 10 years. But when that time comes, I'm going to stop a lot of this and I'm going to just like hide in a cave with my family.
Nice. Hide in a cave. That's quite the transition.
Yeah, I have a nerd cave now. I'm sitting in my nerd cave. At some point in life, it's going to be, I'm really all about not putting my personal life on social media. I stopped using personal social media a long time ago. I like here and there for business stuff, but nah, like I'm not going to be snapping pictures of all my people and putting them up and talking about where we're going. I'm just going to like close down and like just enjoy the time with, a family when it comes.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest 5 to 10 year goal, is putting more, like I'm working very hard now to help gymnastics, but more so because that stuff is so valuable to me that I want to have the ability to spend time with the future, whatever, and not have to worry about working so much to make ends meet. Like I really want to, I'm almost debt free and I'd really like to get debt free in the next 2 years so I can have more opportunities to do stuff like that, So like it's all focused on that kind of stuff. I want to be able to go to the lake for a week and not worry about whatever.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
What about you? What do you want to do in 5 years?
I want to have a job.
I want to pass my boards.
I want to pass my boards. I want to have a job. Yeah. I don't know. I'm in the midst of a lot of transition is about to happen. I'm moving to South Carolina in 3 weeks to start a 3-month rotation.
Cool.
And then I moved back to North Carolina, like way on the coast and somewhere I've never heard of. I moved there for another 3-month rotation. And then I graduate in April. And I'm from like right outside of Philadelphia, like in the suburbs.
Yep.
So I'm still not sure if I want to go back home and try and look for a job or stay down south. I really don't know.
I have two pieces of advice. One is more on the business and tactical side of physical therapy land, and one is more on the personal life one, if you care to hear them. On the business side, live closer to home, live at home maybe for 2 years, save all your money, don't buy stuff, go out and have fun when you want to, but like pay off your loans as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Like just chop that stuff down, because you get your first paycheck and you're like, yeah, let's go. Right. And then it's come to a slippery slope where you start living a lifestyle that really gets away from you. And that, I only say that because that's what happened to me. I had that for a year, and I like thought I was doing what I wanted to do to be happy. And I realized I was just burning a hole in my pocket. So like my best friend, Tim, I'm super jealous. He did this. He lived at home for 2 years right out of school, and he paid off all his loans instantly. And it was the best thing he ever did. He was 24. He was in PT, he was computer software, but he was 23, 24, debt free. And he was just, he could do whatever he wanted. So like take it on the chin, pay a lot of your loans off, live home, live humble, whatever it is, or live in an apartment with like 3 people, and just like pay off super cheap. I think that's the best approach that people, especially in physical therapy or the medical world, should do. And I think it's the opposite of what America tells you to do. So people don't want to do it, which leads to my second point is whatever you do. And I'm just now learning this now, do what you want to do, not what you think you're supposed to do. Like supposed to life is killing so many people. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to get this job. I'm supposed to make this much money. I'm supposed to date this person. I'm supposed to get married because I'm 30. I'm supposed to have a kid. Like it's just like crazy, and it's screwing so many people. And I think a lot of young PTs that I see are doing, I'm supposed to go to a residency because I just need those 3 letters behind my name. I'm supposed to buy this car. I'm supposed to get in an apartment. Like, it's like, dude, who cares? Like, whatever. It's totally fine. Like, there's no path. There's no place to go. Like, carve your own way through the weeds. Like, yeah, don't kill anybody. Like, probably don't go to jail. But like, for the most part, like, stop doing what you think you're supposed to do and just do like what generally makes you happy, which I wish more people would do. I see a lot of people just flounder for the first 3 years at a PT school because they're running the hamster wheel.
Yeah. What if I want to spend my loan money on continuing education?
That's fine. Again, if that matters to you, if that's personally valuable to me, if you like concerts, I love concerts. I do not have a problem spending $200 to $400 on a really good night with a bunch of my friends, buying concert tickets for people and going out and hanging out. I've paid $200 for dinner just because I'm with my best friends and I love it. I've spent $1,000 on a weekend for a grad, a buddy's wedding, and taken time off from work or gone to the lake house and spend it. I have no problem with those things if they're deeply meaningful and valuable to you. I think supposed to life is what is meaningful to someone else or society, or they have an opinion of what they think you should do and they're not close to you. They're not your best friend. And so you're buying a bunch of, clothes you don't really want. And you're going on these trips. You're like, do I like these people? Like, do I really like these people? I think that's the difference, right? Things that are meaningful to you, you should spend money on because it rejuvenates you. It recovers your batteries, like generally. I think 85% of the money people spend is not on that stuff. It's on things that they are doing because they think they should. So I loved Con Ed. I like reading books. I've spent like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on books. And I like that. It helps me recover my batteries. Other people would never want to read a book in their entire life. And they might get way more fulfillment from, spending money on like I think a perfect example is like cars, right? Like I have one friend who spends a lot of money on his car, but he loves his car. He loves exhaust pipes. He loves fixing it. He loves buying stuff. He'll spend 6 hours in a garage doing it. And he like deeply makes him happy. I'm like, yeah, dude, spend 60 grand in your car. Like do your thing. But he loves it. You know what I mean? But he hates paying for bar covers. He will not pay for a bar cover. He hates going to bars, period. So like he's not able to wiggle there. And he hates books. He'll never buy a book ever in his life. But that's him. And that's cool. If that makes him happy and he's generally cool with that, that's fine. I'm sure his work is maybe different. I have another friend, again, who literally clocks in 9 to 5. Like he's like, I do my job. I like my job and I'm good at it, but I'm not going to spend any more time reading or researching like I do because his job is an ends to his means, which is going and doing the rest of his life, building stuff or doing whatever he wants. So like, it's I can't fathom what he's going through, because I'm like, I couldn't do it, man. I care too much about wanting to learn this stuff. And he's like, no, I'm just like, I'm good 9 to 5. I love my job when I'm there, but like, I literally shut my work phone off. And if the building's on fire, then call the next person, because I have a family thing to do, or I have like, this is when I'm going to watch TV or watch Netflix. I'm like, all right, do you? So like, if it's cool for you, that's great. I don't judge anybody. Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, that is awesome. I was trying to explain like a similar thought process to my mom, because I just got certified to be a yoga instructor,
Yeah.
as I like love yoga, and I get to watch people move still, just like I do with PT. And it was actually like a really cool correlation between like the patients I treat. Like I've been able to implement things I've learned in yoga with how I treat my patients that I see in clinic.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was holding me back from doing it was the money, and like thinking like, do I want to spend my money on this? But then it was like, well, if not now, then when? Like, I know I want to do this eventually, so now's the perfect time.
If you love it, it's not even about work, right? If you genuinely like yoga and it's fun for you and it's enjoyable, then spend all your money on it. Spend whatever you want on it, and like, just be happy. Like winning is not money, it's being happy. That's a classic Gary Vee quote that I've stayed with me, is like, if you love it, that's awesome. Like, and that's a perfect example for me. Like, God, you'd have to pay me so much money to do a yoga class. Like, really, like, I'll do one here and there, like, and I've done them before because I've tried them, but like, to get me to spend money on a month membership on yoga would be really tough, really tough. You know what I mean? But for you, you wouldn't even blink an eye at that, right? When I see a textbook come out for $400 that's like brand new and has cutting edge research, I'm like, instantly put in my cart and bought. And like, my other people would be like, what in the world are you buying, right? And there's all these arguments you can make, like buying super healthy food. I have no problem buying super healthy food that's organic and really like hoity-toity, because it makes me feel 1,000% better. And I'm totally cool with that, right? But there's other stuff that I just wouldn't spend. I donated half my clothes, and I haven't bought clothes in like a year, if not that, maybe some socks. I just don't give a shit about my clothes. I wear what I wear, and I have my stuff. It's fine. But like, some people love clothes. Some people think fashion makes them extremely happy, and they love dressing up and having outfits. My mom's kind of like that. I'm like, do your thing, man. It's your money.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, do what makes you happy.
Easier said than done in a world where everyone's going uphill the other way. People are just caught. They feel like they're supposed to do it. They feel like they have to. And it's like, it took me till I was 29 to realize that if I want to sleep in and read books till 12 and then go to a coffee shop and hang out or whatever, that's fine. That's cool. If I want, like, the pandemic was the worst, right? Like, I didn't play video games at all for a long time because I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be working. And then like, me and my brother used to play a ton as a kid, and like, he moved away, but it was like a perfect, like, meaningful relationships are one of the most important things to me. I was like, this is a perfect way for me to like connect with my brother during the pandemic when I have an extra 2 hours to burn.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel bad at all. And like, even now on the weekends, like, I used to really, really tear myself up because I was like, I can't believe you're wasting time playing video games. But like, playing an hour or two with my brother is like, I feel great. I feel like super chill. It's one of the only things I can do to like take my mind off things. And yeah, I want to watch geeky comic books, movies, and spend my money on that. I'm like, cool. That's fine with me now. It's really hard getting over the fear of social judgment from other people is probably the most paralyzing thing for a lot of young people. And I still struggle with it now, but like, whether you're talking about work relationships or whether you're talking about dating or whether you're talking about other people, like, people are just terrified of other people's opinions. That's really all it is. If somebody rejects the shit out of you, it's somebody else's opinion. At work, if you lose a job you really want, it's just one guy's opinion. If he thinks you're going to work the job, and maybe you'll get a new one down the road. But the fact that people can't swallow that, it's really hard. They think it's about them. They think it's like something's wrong with them. And it's like, no, it's just, sometimes it isn't you. Sometimes it just is.
Yeah.
Life just vibes that way.
Yeah, I'm always telling myself that comparison is the thief of joy. Like, I always need to remind myself of that.
Why do you think I ditched personal social media? Because I saw all of the people leading lives that I was supposed to be, quote, leading, and it made me very upset and get into a very jealous comparison way. I'm like 31, and a bunch of my friends are married with kids, and I was like, I'm supposed to be blah 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 at 28, and that's why I stopped my social media, because I love my friends to death and I'm happy for them, but it was not healthy for me to see that. And the same thing happened with work. I saw all these people going to courses and reading books, and I was like, I'm supposed to be reading all these books. I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be treating more people. I'm supposed to be working here. And it was just super toxic. So I just bailed on all of it. And now I just use my business stuff. If I really care about somebody and I want to talk to them, I'll FaceTime them, or I'll call them, or I'll text them. I don't need to look at their salad on Instagram to love them.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like sometimes I'll try and contact my friends from college and I'll be like, "Hey, what's up?" And they'll tell me something and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, we know that you are, in school because we see you post on Instagram that you're, in school." So they don't even bother asking me how I am because they think that they know how I am because I posted a picture of me with textbooks in a classroom.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I mean, this is maybe not your friends, this could be other people, but I think a lot of people get stuck in that. Like a lot of other people are, they'd rather tear you down and make fun of you for working really hard than work harder themselves. I got a lot of that early on in my career when I was working like a ton and I was really reading a lot. Dude, I got made fun of by so many people, like ripped on, like, you're such a geek. You need a girlfriend. You should do this. Like, get a life. And I was like, okay, sounds good, man. Good luck. And looking back 10 years, some of those people are not in great places because when they wanted to spend hours and hours, Thursday, Friday, Saturday going out, I was like, I'd rather just stay home and do my own thing and read, and I'm cool with that. And I think some of the work opportunities I've gotten now are the things that I'm much happier about in my life are because I was able to be like, no, I'm good right now. You guys can go stand around the bar and look at each other and spend $50 on drinks. But like, I'll come out next week. Like, I don't really feel like it this week. I think a lot of people get stuck in that like peer pressure from other people, like, oh, come on, like you're such a bum, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I just don't want to do it right now. And that's fine.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you for taking an hour of your time, of your busy schedule after work and coaching to chat with me on some of these questions. It was super eye-opening and it was awesome. I learned a lot both about, your life, your certifications, and just like your wisdom of like having been there.
No problem, Rachel. I'm happy to help. And I think that it's good to have these chats because for every one of you, there's probably 1,000 more people reading this or listening to this podcast who are going to be very, wow. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. So if it helps people, I desperately wish that when I was this age and coming out of school, that somebody would have helped me with that kind of stuff, especially as it relates to personal life and mental health issues. I think mental health stigma is one of the worst things we have in our country. And so if I can share my story and it helps somebody else, then so be it. It's good.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Awesome. I will. Have a great rest of your evening, and I hope that you make it through that tour to the UK and Australia at some point. That sounds super cool.
It'll happen post-pandemic, maybe in 2029. Just kidding, 2023. All right. Sounds good, Rich. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Yep.